Hi, I'm Andrew Spieler.
And I'm Mary Hope Rennie.
And you're watching or listening to Behind the Sign, real stories from real estate. Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Sign. We have two special guests with us today. Mary Hope, would you like to introduce our guests?
Absolutely. We have Beth Decato, who is an agent with us at Keller Williams. And we also have Joe Griffin with Tri-State Inspection. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And as we have been going through all of these podcasts, we've been talking about the buyer process. That's kind of what we've been doing with the last few and everything that's involved with a buyer and the steps. And so we've had an agent and a lot of our partners with us. So we'd love to get to know you guys, how you got into your business, why you got into your business, and then we'll kind of dive into things the buyers should know and kind of all that. So, Beth, do you want to get us started and let us know how you got into real estate?
Oh, boy. And give you a real quick version. I was in the military. I was in basic training. I had 23 weeks to think about what I wanted to do when I was done. And I decided I wanted to become a lawyer.
Okay.
I was going to go to law school. And when I got out of basic, I did just that. And when I was working at a law firm, which was actually my father is an attorney, I realized I didn't want to be a lawyer, that it wasn't what I had seen on TV. Yeah. So I was in the real estate division at his firm, and I saw happy people coming through, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I was actually a closing agent. So
You didn't know it?
I didn't realize that that's what I was doing because I was more taking on a role of a paralegal, but it just trickled me into figuring out real estate. I think most people fall into it. Yeah. That's how I fell into it.
So how many years ago was that you
23
took your license?
Years
23
ago.
years.
Yeah. And I'm on my 20th year at KW, Keller Williams.
Yeah. So you've been here from...
I was like two guys and a laptop,
and
two offices about this size, and we were, tripping over each other to answer the phone.
And so you obviously have thought it's done okay for you, that you've stuck it out for 23 years.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster. I used to teach courses, teach some of the classes that we offered, and went through creating modules, I remember back in the day, and being a teacher, and back when, Darlene had just started, Elise, a lot of different agents that are actually still here, and we were teaching all the courses. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like it's evolved so much since then, and all the new faces and everybody has a story.
Yes.
And over time, hearing all the stories, it's like, wow, you're a very diverse group.
Absolutely, and I think the roller coasters of just real estate in general. Everybody has their own stories, and every deal has its own story.
And all the training is to get you off the roller coaster.
Yeah.
But we still
run it.
Even with the train. We like the roller coasters.
People board the roller coaster.
Yeah.
For the roller coaster
I just don't go around. If you don't go around,
just stay on the roller coaster.
Yeah. And then the inspections sometimes put us on a roller coaster ride. I've been on a few with Joe.
Yeah. Well, Joe, tell us, because you just started an inspection a couple of years ago.
Yeah, roughly 27 years ago.
Okay.
Now, like Beth, I'm ex-military myself, ex-Air Force, and I was a flying crew chief for a huge cargo aircraft. That was what I did for 8 years. And when I got out, I had really little idea that I was going to be traveling way more than I was ever traveling in the military. I served during the Cold War, so there wasn't a whole lot going on. So when I got out, I got a job working for a company that made homogenizers and high-pressure pumps for food industry, dairy industry, but mainly the nuclear industry. So I flew to 16 different countries for 11 or 12 years, pretty much gone every day, just running a service department and maintaining those pumps. So from there, the company moved to Wisconsin. I didn't want to go. And I had met my soon-to-be wife at that point, and her dad were into restoration of properties, which I had dabbled in a little bit from time to time with my own apartments and so forth. So I resigned and threw in my lot with her and her dad, and we started renovating houses. And then we started our own restoration business for probably about 10 years. And then I had gone through a bunch of really bad home inspections when we put homes up for sale. And it was just the home inspections were sort of in their infancy, and it was Polaroid cameras and scribbled reports. And so a lot of deals were shot down just over shoddy inspections or just a lack of knowledge. So I was determined to kind of change that a little bit. And once we sold our business, we bought the home inspection business roughly 26 or 27 years ago now, and been doing that ever since. And we get paid now for what we know, not so much swinging hammers anymore. So so it all, the Air Force inspecting aircrafts and then doing rehabs and renovations, that led us to the inspection business, so which we've been loving. And I look at it more as an educational thing for me. I always wanted to be a teacher, so I use it more as an educational tool than to. I'm not there to scare buyers off. I'm just there to inform them. So, but that's basically my background and how I got into it. And Beth and I met years ago on one of her listings that she had, and we're both military, formed a bond there. And I work with a lot of her ex-military clients, veterans, et cetera, over the years. So we love to serve our veterans, and we work together on that.
Yep.
I love hearing, you can know people, but hearing the whole story really kind of puts a few things into perspective even. And it's really neat. And I feel like you both brought up that you like to teach, which I thought that was very interesting. You both brought it up that, Joe, you see the inspection as an education tool. Beth, how do you see that? Because you obviously use Joe. You obviously appreciate that. With your buyers, how is that helpful to them?
I think that's why I was in business. I was attracted to his style of the way he performed the home inspection, because he would teach my buyers. And when I started, and even now, I love the first-time buyer. Who doesn't? There's so many opportunities to just give them knowledge, and they want it so bad, and most of them are just so excited, to get the American dream. Isn't that what we all have, want that? And so with Joe, he was like, he'll teach them, and then all of a sudden, I have some of my clients that have the book that I think you used to give a book.
Right.
Things have gotten expensive.
Well, everything's on the internet now. So.
Was that like you filled it out?
It was a report. I think
it was a report.
It was a report, and some of my clients, when I've gone to sell their houses, they still have that report, and they've even some have gotten to the point where they check it off that they did this and that he suggests. It was really well done. It was organized, and I like that. Even when they weren't first-time buyers, I had vacation homes that I sold and stuff like that. I just gravitated to the way that he goes about performing a home inspection. And you know what? A couple of times you've been really hard on a couple of my houses, and I've lost the deals. And
and she still came back.
Really hard on me.
I always try to tell people that the house has committed suicide. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
He's like, oh my God, run for the hills.
Well, so that's a really interesting topic.
Yeah.
Right? So can you walk me through an example of like when that happened and like what was it that maybe jumped out that was sort of a thing that was like, okay, this house is just
2 weeks ago.
Real. I was thinking
You don't have to go very
15 years ago.
You know what? It is, to me, it's about my client. It's about being, I don't work off the edge like that. Anybody that has a realtor should be scared to death, because this is the most expensive thing you're ever going to purchase.
Yeah.
And you have an inspector who's just like shady milady going through,
I like that shady my lady.
Yeah.
Inspections.
Yeah, shady.
Joe, shady my lady.
Shady my lady in Manchester.
I'm going to franchise that.
Yeah. And it's like you do want the truth. And the truth isn't always easy, but it is always right. And to me, I got a dead deal, but I don't have a dead client. And some of the stuff that he has to see and mold. I mean, you want to overlook that. There's case studies out there. That's not his style. It's not my style. You partner up with the people that you want to that are like you or better than you, and I think that's kind of part of the road to success. You know, you want to have a good partnership, and we come from the same level of integrity, which might go back to our military experience. Just having that the core values.
Doing the right thing.
You hope that everybody has
Do
them.
the right thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, understanding that was it wounds from a friend are better than kisses from an enemy, right? Like you'll take that.
You know what? I will say that like for me, when a deal goes south and it doesn't work out, it's not about that. It's the client okay? Like, am I going to still be able to work with this client, on the seller or the buyer? Because if a seller, they have an inspection too. They just don't go to it, which is even harder, right? Because now we have to be telephone. I have to tell the listing agent tell the seller, and then you're like, did it get translated correctly?
Yeah. Well, you know what? As you're saying this, and we're kind of joking about all these stories, the biggest thing is we're able to have inspections again. We always could have inspections. However, and Joe, you probably felt it more than us, there was a point in our market that to be able to get a deal done and accepted, most people had to somehow waive the inspection or have a very high bar. That's kind of how we did some, I'm not going to ask for anything over this amount. So for people who have been in this market that they kind of thought they had to waive all inspections and such, Joe, what do you think is the most critical thing about an inspection or what you're inspecting, that if you don't know this about your house, this could go wrong?
The number one enemy any home has is water. Yeah. So water,
we love water.
Water creates a lot of really negative things. Erosion, of not only of your landscaping, but the soils around the house, but also that water tends to find its way into the attic, possibly through poor ventilation or insulation, or through the basement through water pressure, hydrostatic pressure from the soils, just pushing it into the basement. So that's number one. I think that can ruin any home buyer's experience, especially a first-time home buyer. They buy a home with a wet basement or a home that basically is continually under assault from water because of poor water management, remediation, et cetera, then they're going to hate that whole home buying experience. So to me, that's the most important thing, and that's one of the first things I look at when I pull up to the site is, where is the home located? Is it at the bottom of the hill or is it at the top of the hill? The grading is so important when it comes to any home. So I guess that would be number one. And then you get into the bigger ticket items, the roofing, the septic system, heating, mechanicals, et cetera, the things that you'd write the big checks for. Everything else obviously can be fixed. And most people worry about structural issues. And I would say that, out of the 20,000 inspections I've done, maybe 100 of them failed because of structural concerns, let's say due to the foundation. It's more other things like roofing, mechanicals, wet basements, mold, things like that.
That's really helpful.
It's funny because just last week Andy was on from Buford and he was like, the roof. He just kept saying the roof is like the most
Insurance
important
companies
part,
really worry about roofs. In fact, they're using drones now and they're canceling people's policies over that. So,
well, and that's what he was talking, and the way he described it was everything's underneath the roof, which I thought was a fascinating, very simple to the fact. Everything. Well, and you even say this in your inspection. We're going to start at the top and go down because everything.
Right, water goes from top to bottom. Yeah, so that's why I start at the top.
Like you just said, it also comes from underground into the basement, right? And
Right.
sort of flood zones and why that was the other big issue you were talking about was flood zones.
And the strange thing is, most people think mold issues. They automatically assume that it's a basement, and almost 9 times out of 10 it's the attic. Yeah, which is most people don't understand that.
Yeah. So maybe Beth, you could answer, because you've been a realtor through the last few years in this competitive market. What is probably your best guidance in regards to inspections and how to get a deal won in this? And we're getting back into the spring market, so it's competitive again. And,
Yeah, we've been, my clients and I have looked at every house individually. I don't have a blanket statement for it because they're, sometimes you can go into a home and you can see that it's a little, Joe and I actually both call it cream puff. It has a presence about it The systems have tags, the foundation, just it's a real obviously well kept, well manicured type of home. And when you have that, and you also have public water and sewer, and it's not too old, I will
There's
tell
not
you,
as
I
much
don't
of a
feel
risk.
as nervous. You know,
Right.
it doesn't bother me as much as someone that is making a choice to do that. It's when it's a tired, rundown estate sale, septic, well. Flips, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
you're opening yourself up, exposing yourself for a kick if
Yeah.
you know someone wasn't honest.
Right.
And sometimes they don't even know. It's not even about them having not been
Absolutely.
honest. It's really about them not knowing that there was damage. I just had a home inspection, septic failed, and my client didn't know. He was an elderly man. I don't think he had the pump for a while, and here we were, you know, and it failed. And luckily for us, you know, he realized the error in his ways, and we offered to pay for a new one.
Compensate.
Do you want the 15,000? Because that's what it costs, 15 to 20. Do you want 15 towards your closing cost? Now we're turning that negative into a positive where we disclose it, and then we just say, how do you want it? Because we know, like, we have to have there's just certain things you have to have, and that septic is one,
Yep.
you know.
Well, and back to you, Joe, about education. How do you see, because of course there's going to be things in every home, even those cream puff homes, right, that need to be more kept an eye on and things. So how do you as an inspector kind of break that down to being like, okay, you need to be worried about this house as general, like run to the hills? Usually you don't say that. I think you've had maybe one or two of those that you've told me that. Run to the
You've told
Darlene
Michael.
Lynch, Darlene Lynch, a great agent who's since retired. I actually pulled her clients aside and said, "You really." I treated them like I would my own children, and it was a complete horror show. And Darlene really appreciated it after that happened, and they went on to buy something else, so they were fine. But it had everything wrong with it possibly could go wrong. So, and she was really new, and this is how old and how long I've been in the business. She was.
She's been doing about 25 years too, I think, right?
Yeah, and
So we got in the same time.
and she was on like her first ever home inspection was with me, and I think that was her first one.
Oh, that's a good way to.
So, but the way I structure my reports is immediately it's green and red. I don't mess around with all kinds of boilerplate. It's just basically what is good about the house and what what needs to be worked on. And so the report's structured mainly with safety concerns. Number one, that's the first few pages, and then you get into the service and repair issues. And I always tell people this is that you can always tell when there's two ways to approach a house. You can love the house that you're living in, or you can just live in the house that you're living in. And you really want the former and not the latter when it comes to that. And like Beth, just going back to what Beth said, it's a gamble. You don't know what you're going to get on a listing side. And when I show up, on the buyer's side, it's tough sometimes on the listing agents because they really don't have any control. They can give advice to the seller and say, you really should do these things. And maybe they don't do those, and then the house isn't ready for inspection, and then it fails miserably. And I just want to go back real quick to the topic. Beth jokingly said, that one of the deals didn't get across the finish line, and I was the inspector on that. And I will say this is that was a few weeks ago, and recently, in the last couple of days, that same client pulled me aside. He came on another inspection with his parents, with Beth as the agent, so he still referred Beth to his own parents. So that shows the trust that he had in her. And he pulled me aside and he said, "I want to thank you for the inspection that you did. I had no idea." And he wasn't at the inspection, which is
harder.
It's a little bit harder. So, but he still had that same trust and faith in Beth that he brought his parents to look at more houses, even though the one that he was looking at didn't obviously make it. And
He went under contract today.
He did.
Oh, there
okay,
you
good.
go.
Yeah, all right, good. Yeah, even when
Another
things
one going.
Can we schedule that right now?
things can happen latent. So it sometimes it takes stuff to germinate time. And so you're sowing those seeds, and even though this one deal didn't work out, it still fostered something else for you, which is great, and still maintain that trust. So that's what it's all about: honesty and trust. If you don't have that, you don't have anything.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, as an agent, if you have a person that you're working with that is going to push you through and not take a step back when there's like a major hiccup,
Yes.
that's not for me. That's
Well,
you know, that's
don't
dangerous.
need skill and expertise when things are easy.
Yeah.
And that's where it's an interesting market we're kind of walking into. We're back into home inspections as a regular thing. We're back into negotiations. We're back into appraisal negotiations. We're back into all of that, which requires skill, which, you know, Beth, you've had a few years of that, of experience of how to walk people through. How have your skills changed, or your perspective of real estate and how you treat clients between like when you started and kind of that bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, I love looking at houses and I love walking through houses.
When I'm working with them, from the experience that I have with walking around with Joe, I mean, I don't sit at a computer while the inspection's happening and, you know, not pay attention. I actually walk around with him, and
Right.
as many as he's done, I've been to almost every. I can't even imagine one that I haven't.
You just don't go into the crawl spaces, which
Yeah,
you know,
and
How
or
dare
I
you.
don't do the attics. I'm afraid of heights. But like, I'm going through a house before we even get to a home
Yes.
inspection with a little bit of an inspector hat on. You know, just a little bit, just so you know. I'm kind of looking up. I'm looking for leaks. I'm kind of like checking out radiator. You know, just I'm looking at it a little different. I think my buyers are usually looking at it. Will my furniture fit?
Yes.
Will my family like it here? Do I feel comfortable?
Yeah.
Is it the space that I need? Is, you know, all the things. What can I have, like friends and family over? Is there enough parking? Is this happening? Not happening? So I just kind of look at it where I'm doing a pre-inspection,
it's smart.
It is.
and I just
Well,
kind
just the very
of bring
fact,
them up.
Yeah, like you were saying, there are different grades of homes, right? You can get a feel of, okay, this home, they put paint, paint and lipstick on a pig, pretty much.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can see that after a while of being in homes, but then with that experience guiding them and then saying, okay, now we're going to go through the full thing and you're going to get to know the house. And that's what I feel like, Joe, you're giving them almost the 411 of their house and how it works. What do you think for you, Joe, with your experience for especially first-time home buyers, but I also see it with
Anybody.
any buyers that you think is probably the biggest thing you have to educate them on when you're walking through the house?
I think the biggest thing is that it's an ongoing process. You're not just going to move in and put up the hammock and get the lemonade out. Every spring it's basically time. Walk around the house and keep your arms around your house. Do not let it get away from you. That's the thing, because you never know what life is going to hand you. You could end up with some sort of a new job, and you end up having to be relocated, and you have to put your house on the market really rapidly, and you could pay the price for not doing the maintenance and deferring the maintenance that needs to be done. So you don't really, you got to take care of this thing. A lot of people here, I'll take for an example, driveways. Driveways are probably the one thing that most people ignore. And
It's not pretty or fun.
No, but it's very important, especially if it's a 400, 500 foot driveway or whatever, and it's allowed to degrade. That's super, super expensive when it gets time to repair that or replace it. But by just simply sealing the driveway every 7 years, which sounds pretty simple, and it is a pretty simple process, your driveway will last forever. And people just don't think about it. They just completely ignore the driveway until it's almost impassable. So it's things like that. Trying to educate people on maintenance is the big thing. This is how long you can expect this to last. This is typically what you should do with this as far as service is concerned, maintenance. So there's a lot of things that go into, especially with first-time homebuyers. You have no idea. They might come from a condo and they weren't responsible for anything. They didn't have to, service the boiler or change the filters on a furnace or do any sort of inspections on their house. They didn't worry about that because it was a rental situation possibly, or a condo, and a lot of things were taken care of for them. So that's the educational part of the thing that I like, is that every house is different. Like Beth says, everyone is a challenge there, and so just explaining to people that you can't just live in the house. You've got to take care of it, and you don't let things go. Especially if you live in a house that's wood sided and wood trim, that's where the water water will get you. Vinyl, you can relax a little bit, maybe spend more time in the hammock. But if you have a wood-sided house with wood trim and it's an older home with no gutters, you're not going to be in the hammock, real quick. So it's just that's the thing. It's just that you really gotta take care of it. Don't let it get away from you, because then it makes Beth's job harder, makes my job harder, and it makes the chances for the.
Well, you don't get as much money either.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I generally don't worry.
For itself.
Yeah. I generally don't worry about the money side of things. That's more commission based for real estate agents and stuff to worry about. So I worry more about the just the chances of the house not selling and not being able to move forward with your life and the plans that you might have had, because that can derail you. If your house doesn't sell and you had plans to move to somewhere, that's going to put a hiccup in your life plans really quickly. So we want to basically just stay on top of it.
Yeah. Well, and your example of the driveway is paramount. Like, it's worth every penny of a basic inspection. Just that if you knew that every 7 years, if you maintain this, you wouldn't have to have this huge expense down the road. That's not even to even sell it, but to just maintain your home. And I think, Joe, from my experience with you too, ages of homes and that knowledge of, okay, this type of home, these are going to be the issues. This, this age of a home, you don't have to worry about this. This age home, I remember Joe did my own home's inspection. It was city water and sewer, but he said, you better get a camera through those pipes, because in this neighborhood, this is the issues. Those are big things that I had no idea of. But, I think every century home has a little bit, and we have a lot of old homes.
Yeah.
Right, you got lead paint, asbestos.
The other thing made me think of is, don't underestimate if you can't have a home inspection during the time of when you're purchasing it. When you do buy it, you can have a home inspection. You know what I mean? Because if you don't know how to run your home, you don't know anything, and you've never bought a home before. I know, Joe, at COVID, were you doing a deal or a special? But nobody was doing home inspections, and he was like, oh my goodness, business is like going down. I don't understand. I'm doing the same thing.
Getting worried about.
Yeah, getting worried. So he was like, I got to do
people.
something. And he reacted, to it in a positive way. Was, okay, fine. You couldn't have one when you were buying it, but now you have it.
Yes.
Get one. Let me teach you about your home.
Yes.
And there's a value add there. So if we're still in the situation, and I'll tell you, we still are in a multiple bidding situation.
Right.
Every single house that I put an offer on this weekend had 16 to 18 offers.
Wow.
There you go.
It's still alive and kicking. I did not waive it. We did not get it either. So I'm still out there looking. And, if we get to a point, and that's where we're headed again, you still have to call Joe and at least understand, because first time buyers, every house is different. Yeah. Every house, everything is different. Just the landscape is different, the locations of, the rainfall, the trees, the terrain, everything is always, there's not one property that is the same.
Well, I was thinking from the beginning when you mentioned this is their biggest investment probably of their whole life.
Yeah.
And we're going in and walking and kind of saying, oh, I love this home, or I don't. But in investment, you need to know the risks.
Well, and you have 15 minutes to decide.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't get a second showing anymore. It's it's like the same old. Listed on Thursday, open house on Saturday, Sunday. Offers due by Monday.
At 5
and
p.m.
and then it's like, oh boy, So if like I said, 15 minutes is not a long time to make a choice.
So I'm going to add a different question than we have, because inspections are fascinating to me. Do you have a craziest story, Joe?
I was going to say the wild card. What have you found? The craziest thing?
Okay, so the craziest thing, and I as a home inspector, I obviously on websites with other home inspectors and people swapping stories, and so the running joke is always, well, I'm going to find that bag of money in the attic that nobody knew about, or I'm going to find a dead body, and I'm like, okay, so I'm the guy that found the dead body, so that's the one thing that always stands out to me.
At an inspection.
Yeah, I found a woman had committed suicide the night before the home inspection, and she knew that I was going to find her. So this happened on, it was basically north end of Manchester, I'd say probably 15 years ago now. Yeah, and it was really a bizarre day, because I'm not a huge dog person. I'll admit that, just because I see the damage that dogs do to yards and homes. And
I also know you're not a huge fan of pests.
so
That's next episode.
And the thing is, like, walking around the yards and stepping in poop. So I happen to get out of the get out of my truck and immediately step in poop. So I'm cursing under my breath. I'm like, these damn dog owners and blah blah blah. So I get my ladder out and I'm up on the roof, and the neighbor next door comes out and she says, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm a home inspector. And, well, we're looking out for our people here in the neighborhood. I said, oh, well, I'll tell the homeowner that, you're keeping an eye out. So she goes in the house. The buyer shows up. So I do top down, like Mary says. I'm, attic all the way to the basement. So I get down to the basement, it's a one-car garage under. Open the door. There's a car in there. I don't look in the car because I'm not inspecting cars. But I walk around the front of the car and I notice there's somebody slumped over in the front seat. And I go over and look in, and there's a poor older woman. So I would say older. She's probably my age now, 65, 64. And so she had committed suicide, didn't want to sell the house, and she knew that I was going to find her, which, was, to me, was not fair. But that's just the way it is. People don't think about that, and it's pretty much a selfish act, obviously, when they're doing that. But So
Wow.
the thing that made me really, and I, contemplating the whole dog issue, was when I looked in the car, there was a pile of excrement on her lap, and the listing agent came down. He was with Remax, and I said, Mike, we're waiting for the EMTs and the cops to get there, and I said, what's with the poop? And he goes, oh my God, have you seen Snickers? And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, I used to walk. That's my client's dog is Snickers. So I'm like, oh no. I look down at the brake pedal, and there's Snickers rolled up down there. And he was sitting on her lap, apparently ready to go, and the car never left the garage. So she took her dog. So now I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I was out there cursing this woman and her dog before this inspection. So that really hit me hard. I'm like, so now I'm just a lot more chill when it comes to that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So you got through the whole inspection.
Whole inspection, get down to the garage, open the door, find her. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'6". The buyer was probably 6'7", probably outweighed me by 40 pounds. He's bawling now. He's crying. He leaves. So I get interrogated by the cops for 2 hours because I was in the house alone initially until the buyer showed up.
Oh my goodness.
So I ended up having to go back to that house, which was even crazy. I tried to get my partner at the time to go back. No, to finish the inspection. to finish it.
Gotta finish
pick up some radon.
Finish it, yeah. So I go back to the house, and I'm just, so I start the inspection over from top to bottom because that's what I do. I'm not gonna, do an abbreviated inspection. Get back down to the garage. There's the car. Obviously, she's not in the car anymore, but it was just a crazy time. And and I just felt like, for weeks after that, I thought about it, why did she do that to me? And why? And she had a family, you know what I mean? It's just suicide, it's an awful thing. But so that's the craziest story. Haven't found the bag of money yet. Looking for that.
Keep going.
So, keep going.
I trust you'll find it.
We actually, when I moved into my place, we found a safe in the eaves, hidden, tucked away
So you
in
found
the
the
guest
money.
room, and we were like, "What's in there?" It was locked, and then we had the code. And the previous owners didn't have the code, and so we had to hire somebody from a safe company to come out and crack it. And we were like,
What was in it?
And it was empty.
Oh,
Man, it's such a tease.
Like a Geraldo Rivera story. The Al Capone vault
we
story.
were all excited for you.
I know,
Yeah.
but the guy who cracked it, he was like, it's always empty. He was like, there's never anything in these. We said, but
That's
the good news
actually
is
a good
now you got a
prank.
good safe.
That could be a good prank to pull on someone.
Yeah,
Puts a
right.
big bunch of fake money in it.
Yeah.
Do you have a crazy story?
I don't. I was thinking I don't.
We're not.
It's so
We're boring.
I just.
I'm scared. I mean, what you experience is something that I worry about going home on the photography side. So sometimes I'll go by myself to a vacant house, and I go in, and it's I don't know the homeowner. I don't have anybody there, and you go in, and it's sometimes I'm out in the middle of nowhere in the woods early in the morning, and there's animals, and I found a dead mouse once. That was the most extreme
You
thing I
are
found.
really
But
excited.
it's
You and your empty
are you
safe.
talking
I know,
about
right?
showings?
Well, that's what I was going to say.
it's like,
Whoa,
have
that's
had-
different.
yeah.
I've had the people in the house when they're
Well,
sound
you know what?
asleep.
Any agent, I think some of the best stories come from the agents that sell multifamilies.
Oh,
okay?
I got stories on those. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those are fun when the tenants don't know you're coming,
Oh, they don't care.
and or they don't care. But
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
walked into a strip
Yeah.
poker game.
Yeah.
That's a fun one.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. It was funny.
Well, on that note,
That's right.
thank you guys for coming. Will you
Thanks,
come
that
back
was
for
fun.
round 2? That sounds
Yeah,
fun.
that
Is
was
what
fun.
Beth
That
said?
was
Yeah,
good.
Okay.
thank you so much. I think it's so helpful for especially people thinking about getting into real estate as a realtor or buying or selling. There's so much of this business that we kind of just do on a regular basis, and we forget how much we do and how many steps there are and what it involves, right? It's not just opening a lockbox. There are so many steps, and the more people are educated, the more they'll understand, and that's kind of what we're doing here. Looking
good.
behind the sign
Yeah,
and
just
all
trying to expose
everything
it.
about it.
Yeah.
So,
Very good.
thank
Well,
you so
good.
much.
And thank you for joining us for another episode. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Behind the Sign, Real Stories from Real Estate.
We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and gained a little insight into the world behind those for sale signs.
Today's episode was brought to you by Keller Williams Realty Metropolitan, proudly serving New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and Massachusetts. A special thank you to our agents, leadership, and partners at KW Metro for their continued support.
And thanks to you, our amazing listeners and viewers. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Leave us a review or comment. We love hearing your feedback, and it helps more people discover the show.
And if you have a real estate story you'd like to share or a question you want answered on a future episode, reach out to us at metro.kw.com or find us on Instagram, handle at KWMetroNH.
Until next time, we'll see you
Behind the Sign.